So you're telling me that not all believers get to go to heaven? In this video, we're addressing the Jehovah Witnesses' understanding of who the 144,000 are in Revelation, because it directly affects how they view the afterlife and the eternal destinations of both believers and non-believers. Basic Christian doctrine of the afterlife is that once you die, you're going to either heaven or hell. If you believe that Jesus died for your sins and was resurrected, then upon your death you will enter into heaven and go through the pearly gates. But if you don't accept the gospel message, then you will ultimately die in your sin for your rebellion towards God, thus going to hell to await your final judgment. Both of these outcomes, Jehovah Witnesses do not agree with. The simplest way that we know this is because of their teaching of the 144,000 in Revelation. Going into their frequently asked questions section on what do Jehovah Witnesses believe, item 6 on heaven, they will say that relatively a small number of people, 144,000, are resurrected to life in heaven to rule with Jesus in the kingdom. So if only 144,000 get to go to heaven, then what about the rest of the millions of believers? Item 6 in the article on earth says, God created the earth to be mankind's eternal home. God will bless obedient people with perfect health and everlasting life in an earthly paradise. So those who are obedient will get to live on earth forever, but they don't get to go to heaven. Okay, so what about those who don't believe? Item 6 on death. People who die pass out of existence. They do not suffer in a fiery hell of torment. God will bring billions back from death by means of a resurrection. However, those who refuse to learn God's ways after being raised to life will be destroyed forever with no hope of a resurrection. So basically, once you die, you don't really have any assurance of going to heaven if you're a believer, but you're for sure not going to hell to be tormented if you don't believe. So once you die, you're in an unconscious state in the grave, waiting to be resurrected in one fashion or another. This is called soul sleep, which is something that Seventh-day Adventists also teach. In another article on resurrection, Jehovah Witnesses believe that righteous people like Noah, Abraham, Sarah, Moses, Ruth, and Esther will be resurrected to life here on earth. Really? You're really going to say that Abraham, the father of our faith, and Moses don't get to go to heaven because they're not part of the 144,000? I hope two people in the Old Testament immediately jump to your mind to refute this. Continuing on. Jehovah Witnesses say that the number is small because they interpret Jesus' words in Luke 12:32 to be referring to this little flock as the 144,000 in Revelation. Part 24 says, when would the 144,000 Christians be resurrected? The Bible tells us that this would happen after Christ started to rule in heaven. We are now living in that time, and most of the 144,000 have already resurrected to heaven. Those who are still on earth and who died in our day will instantly be resurrected to life in heaven. How can you possibly know that most of the 144,000 have already been resurrected to heaven? Can you see them? Well, the org told us so. Okay, so can they look into heaven and give us a general head count? Seriously, how can't one see that the Watchtower Society is just making stuff up at this point to control their people? So good questions to ask any time on this subject are, how do you know this? What is your proof? And how many are left to go? These types of specific questions hopefully will get them thinking critically about what they've been taught all their life. Earlier I said that in their worldview that nobody from the Old Testament era is in heaven, so here's your proof to that. If you read their Good News from God pamphlet and flip to the 7th section on what is the kingdom, you will see item 3 describes who will rule with Jesus. A group called the Holy Ones will rule with Jesus in heaven. The first Holy Ones chosen were Jesus' faithful apostles. That's why they said earlier that people like Abraham, Moses, Noah, and anybody in the Old Testament, including David, the man after God's own heart, won't get to go to heaven but have to remain here on earth. but John Doe from Indiana has a chance to go to heaven. Jehovah has continued to select faithful men and women as holy ones until now. Like Jesus, they are resurrected with a spiritual body. This is why it was important for us to cover Jesus' bodily resurrection a couple videos ago. It continues with, how many people go to heaven? Jesus called them a little flock. They will finally number 144,000. They will rule over the earth with Jesus. Other than simply pointing out that both Enoch and Elijah were clearly taken to heaven prior to the apostles, the point that we're going to address is that they are including women in the 144,000. The only two descriptions of who the 144,000 are can only be found in the book of Revelation. So flip to the last book in the Bible and go to chapter 7, verses 4 through 8. And I heard the numbers of those who were sealed, 144,000, sealed out of every tribe of the sons of Israel. Out of the tribe of Judah, 12,000 sealed. Out of the tribe of Reuben, 12,000. Out of the tribe of Gad, 12,000. Out of the tribe of Asher, 12,000. Out of the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000. Out of the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000. Out of the tribe of Simeon, 12,000. Out of the tribe of Levi, 12,000. Out of the tribe of Issachar, 12,000. Out of the tribe of Zebulun, 12,000. Out of the tribe of Joseph, 12,000. Out of the tribe of Benjamin, 12,000 sealed. An easy observation is that you can easily tell is that this is about the 12 tribes of Israel. Careful observation will see that the tribe of Dan wasn't included, but Manasseh took his place. Does that mean anything special? It's hard to say because there are different tribe lists in Revelation, but Dan is never mentioned in any of them. So from chapter 7, the only thing that can be exegetically pulled from the text about the 144,000 are that they are Israelites or Jews. No Gentiles are included. Chapter 14 now, verses 1 through 4. Then I saw, and look, the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 who have his name and the name of his Father written on their foreheads. I heard a sound coming out of heaven like the sound of many waters and like the sound of loud thunder. And the sound that I heard was like singers who accompany themselves by playing on their harps. And they are singing what seems to be a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and the elders. And no one was able to master that song except the 144,000 who have been bought from the earth. So we still know that they're at least human since they were taken from the earth, which is something to remember because there are views that try to tie the 144,000 to an angelic host that didn't commit the Genesis 1 through 4 sin. Verse 4 now. These are the ones who did not defile themselves with women. In fact, they are virgins. These are the ones who keep following the Lamb no matter where he goes. These were bought from among mankind as first fruits to God and to the Lamb. So the main bullet points in this verse are that these people did not defile themselves with women, and they are virgins. The context is clear that these people never had sex with women. It's really easy to assume that they are made up of only men then. Otherwise, you would have to claim that part of the 144,000 are virgin lesbians who didn't have sex with women. Sorry for the graphic explanation, but understand that is what Jehovah's Witnesses are saying exegetically. Now the last line that says they are taken among mankind is the word anthropos in Greek, which is where we get anthropology for the study of human societies, but it also can be used to mean strictly males, which is why when you look at all the other translations, there's pretty much an even split between which English word they use to translate it with. Just because the word is mankind doesn't mean that it still could be open to women because the earlier verses don't allow it. So here's what we know. First, they're Israelites. Second, they're humans. And third and most importantly, they're virgin men. This should be so clear and easy to understand for anybody, but we see that the Watchtower Society goes completely off the map with their interpretation. And the funny thing is that in this case, their New World Translation is fine, but their interpretation is so far off. So maybe you've been asking yourself throughout all of this is this really a big deal? Does it matter if their interpretation of the 144,000 is different from ours? Is this a salvation issue? And the answer to all of these is yes. It is affecting not just their view about what happens when they die, but even deteriorates the sufficiency of Jesus' atonement on the cross. Their gospel message to you is essentially that if you believe, you might get to go to heaven if you're lucky enough to be elected to the 144,000. If not, you get to remain on earth only if you're obedient enough with enough works. And this is the good news that they want everyone to believe in. Belief in that Jesus' atonement and resurrection only gives you a Powerball's chance of going to heaven, and that the rest of the time it's up to you to live obediently enough to remain here on earth without getting annihilated by Jehovah upon your death. And what about the justice for all the evil that people have committed throughout history? Does Hitler get a second chance? But regardless of him getting a second chance, do any of these types of people receive any form of justice or punishment after their death? Well, according to Jehovah's Witnesses, no. Being annihilated or casted out of existence is all the punishment that they will receive. Essentially, you're telling non-believers you can eat, sleep, and be merry all you want, because the worst case scenario is that you go back to being dirt, which is exactly what non-believers think anyways. So it is a major deal to twist the 144,000 around, because when you start changing the narrative of what happens when you die, you essentially are changing the gospel message that Jesus clearly taught himself. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. Which is why in Luke 23:42, the criminal said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus said to him, "I assure you, today you will be with me in paradise." The criminal put his faith in Jesus. He didn't deserve it, he couldn't change anything about his past, and wouldn't have another day attached to his life to do anything better with it. His faith in Jesus in that very moment saved him, and Jesus gave him his 100% guarantee that he would be with him in paradise that day. There is no sweeter gospel than this. So a reminder, hit the subscribe button below, turn on the notification bell, hit the like button, and leave a comment, and look in the description below for the link for the handout. In the meantime, stay salty.